What's up, y'all? Bill McNeil rocking the mic again, cold representing Rocket Fuel Malt Liquor. It's got the mad flavor that takes any situation to the next level. So when the party starts bouncing and the ladies start bumping, tighten up your flow with Rocket Fuel. Rocket Fuel Malt Liquor. Damn!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and today I've got some more comic industry news. Today we're going to be talking about DC Comics, and they are rumors are that they are going to be licensing out some characters. There was some feelers put out there. There's different stories whether DC put out the feelers or people were putting out their feelers to DC on whether or not they were up for licensing some of their characters. And it turns out looks like they likely are. And we also have some reports. Well, not reports. We have some evidence that there have been multiple print errors with some of the graphic novels that DC Comics are putting out, likely having something to do with all the recent layoffs that have been happening at DC, the firings, cut down a lot of staff. And it looks like maybe some of the people that have been left behind didn't know exactly how to take out the markings where the margins were going to be and some other stuff like that. And here with me to talk about that is an industry insider, somebody that can possibly shine some light on all these issues. He's an independent comic writer. He's an editor. He's an award-winning editor. Joe Corallo, how you doing?
I'm all right, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing good. So the rumor that DC was going to stop making comics and license out all their characters has been out there for a very long time. This doesn't exactly follow in with this or in with that rumor, but it does kind of show that they are willing to wheel and deal with some of their characters, depending on the genre of book that they're doing. Now, before we get on these details, Joe, I do want to say this to the viewers. If you haven't subscribed to Thinking Critical YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoy this video. Give us a thumb down if you don't. Either way, we want to hear your thoughts on DC Comics licensing out some of their characters and exactly who they are, as well as these printing errors. Do you think we're going to see more of that? Now, getting into it, DC in the past has had a partnership with Random House, now Penguin Random House. I guess they're conflicting stories whether DC put out the feelers or maybe IDW put out feelers, or was it Dynamite? But there were feelers put out there. Some of the publishers in the industry thought the asking price from DC to use their characters was a little bit too high. It included like a rumor that Marvel said it was too high. I don't imagine that DC or Marvel will be reaching out to each other to do licensing. But it sounds like we're going to be getting new, graphic novels from Penguin Random House of the young adult kids graphic novel variety. Are you surprised to hear this?
I'm not. I mean, when it comes to Dynamite and IDW, for example, they've already had a working experience with at IDW you have the Batman TMNT crossover book. At Dynamite, I think it was a few years ago now, you had the Batman the Shadow crossover book. So they've already dealt with figuring out the license to do these books in floppies and trades. They might have had conversations about if we go one step further, what would that look like? And that's just not in the cards right now. When it comes to something like, Penguin Random House, what was it? A few months, or maybe it was several months ago now, there was the announcement that Marvel was working with Scholastic. Yeah, to do, I think they announced 3 graphic novels. I think it was Miles Morales, Miss Marvel, and I'm blanking on the other one, but there were 3 graphic novels that they were going to do. So it doesn't surprise me that, Random House would, maybe be hitting up DC being like, hey, Marvel's doing this with Scholastic. If we do, maybe 3 or so graphic novels, maybe we can package it better and get those numbers higher. Because what was it? I think Perch put out a video recently sort of looking at the YA graphic novel numbers in Amazon. And when you look at those numbers, the ones that DC did well with were the Titans books mostly. There was that Primer book, which was a bit of an anomaly, but Raven and Beast Boy were doing well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see Penguin Random House, kind of being in a position where they're like, look, we think
we know the market better.
Yeah, we know the market better. There's clearly potential with Beast Boy Raven. If we take these Titans characters, maybe a handful of other characters, we could package these better. We could probably sell, triple what you're selling right now with these. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see this roll out, and if it does roll out, it's going to be these Titans characters and maybe a handful of others, but they're going to want to focus on the Teen Titans.
So it kind of makes sense that it would be Penguin Random House. They're essentially like their exclusive distributor, well, not distributor, but publisher of graphic novels right now in trades.
Yeah.
Once they made the switch away from Diamond, they have that agreement. Now, what is interesting is Michelle, was it William?
Wells.
Mm-hmm. Who was the EIC after Bob Harris left. She was recently fired. She has worked at Penguin Random House before. She was, I believe, the driving force behind the DC YA graphic novels that they're putting out. Obviously, we saw the controversy about I Am Starfire. Do you think this is? It doesn't feel like this is by accident. Like they said, we don't want to go in that direction. That was kind of what you were doing. Let's farm this out and let somebody else do it.
Yeah, and I mean, for all we know, Michelle Wells could end up back at Penguin Random House as the DC Random House
liaison or something. Yeah.
It's very possible, and to be a little more open-minded, sympathetic towards what Michelle Wells was doing. When you do look at those numbers, her strategy could have been, we're gonna throw shit on the wall, see what sticks. They saw that the Titans books ended up doing well, and she might have been able to pivot and start moving the YA line in a different direction. And this might be the outcome of that is, okay, look, we were able to show that there's a few IPs here that resonate with the YA market. We can then shop this around, get Penguin Random House to license this off, have them deal with it, and make that money.
So what do you think about the rumor that like even Marvel checked in to see what the price is? I just can't say that Marvel and DC working together because they're part of Warner Media and Disney, two competitors, HBO Max, Disney Plus. I just can't imagine them allowing Marvel or even access, for any price to their characters.
I can't see that. I could see it being like secondhand. I could see like maybe the real story is they reached out to, Penguin Random House about doing something similar, and we're like, oh, well, what are you guys charging, or what's like DC charging you so we can like match it kind of thing. Like I could see there maybe having been a secondhand way of doing it, but I don't see them doing anything directly for exactly those reasons.
Yeah, they're basically direct competitors, and they're part of much bigger entities that are absolutely going to war on the streaming side, at least. So
yeah, but also Marvel has had very little licensing with their characters, like cross-promotional stuff. Like, you've seen DC over the years do a lot more, like with Dynamite, IDW,
Star Trek, Green Lantern.
Yeah, there's been very little of that comparatively with Marvel. But yeah.
Honestly, Marvel has licensed their characters out. We got the IDW Action line, where it's the comic books that are intended for younger audiences. They do have their deal with Scholastic, so
yeah,
obviously they do license, but
yeah, they do license. It's been very recent. DC has kind of been doing this stuff for many years, but recently with IDW. In particular, they've been doing a lot more of that stuff, but they don't cross into the other franchises that IDW has. It's very much like you're just doing like this bit of Marvel stuff or Star Wars. They do like the young adult, like Star Wars adventure comics and all of that too.
Now, the good news for Penguin Random House is there's a plethora of comic book experience on the market right now. We've just seen downsizing at DC Comics. We've seen downsizing to some of the smaller publishers. We're expecting that at Marvel. So there's plenty of people with experience in the market, like Michelle Wells, that are out there. If they need to scoop them up, certainly in the editorial services, and kind of get this line going.
Yeah, and Michelle Wells is probably one of the better choices there, because it you know, you can extrapolate and see that there might have been a grander vision there that, you know, needed to play out a little longer. So I could see that happening. But there's also got to be a mix of new blood too, because you can't fix the sort of problems and the stagnation by just moving and swapping people from one position to another. That's also not going to work.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, DC Comics, you know, if the rumor is correct, they are licensing out. We're expecting an announcement somewhat in the near future that Penguin Random House has an agreement. They're going to be putting up and producing their own YA graphic novels, kids graphic novels with DC characters. Now, DC could use the help because after all the layoffs, they obviously lost a wealth of experience as far as publishing. We are seeing some pretty major errors as far as some trades. We'll talk about probably the most egregious one first. This is from the Lois Lane Enemy of the State trade that was just recently come out. And they didn't remove the lines where the margins are supposed to be throughout the entire book.
Yeah, that's that's a big one. I've seen that stuff in editing, getting pages back from a letter to be approved and still having the lines there. But then once everything's approved, you get the final files where everything's trimmed and it's fine. So yeah, this seems like, you know, a comedy of errors. It seems like, you know, maybe files were approved, but they didn't end up communicating that they needed to get the finalized files. This could also be just not deleting the previous files and just like sending the wrong folder over. There's so many ways this could have happened, but yeah, it's head scratching, you know?
You don't expect it to see print.
You don't expect an error like this that you don't even see from small publishers go into print, you know? Like, you don't even
see this from like, people that are on crowdfunding and maybe doing their first project ever. Like,
yeah.
It feels like they must have lost a couple of people in the process that knew everything, but they didn't have any like backup for it. They didn't realize that you had to finalize the product, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a mix of that. It could be a mix of, depending on when this was wrapping up and going to print, this could have happened during the shuffling around of people, and you know, this could potentially just be a short-lived problem of miscommunication, swapping, you know, the authority to send files here and there and just not having the right files on hand. So hopefully this is the kind of thing where it's like, oh, this is a blip because, you know, when the person handed the keys over or whatever, some files weren't, you know, in the proper order or something. So hopefully this is just a quick thing that we don't see happen again, you know, after this like small grouping of errors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you hope this is they don't make the same mistake twice. Now, this isn't the only mistake. We've got a couple more to talk about. Mm-hmm. There's another one that's in a Underworld. I think was it an omnibus or was it hardcover? They left out a color.
Yes.
On multiple pages. It's obviously this bright green color that you're seeing here. On the right, you're seeing like all the white where the colors should be.
Yeah, I mean, this one definitely feels like, you know, the person who was working on this was let go. They were in the middle of putting this together. Maybe they had the idea of, because having read the article, it's like the neon green wasn't going to show up the same way. It was like a gimmicky sort of thing, and they needed to replace the color. So the only thing that makes sense here is whoever was working on that is gone. And then whoever took it over wasn't familiar with the original book.
Didn't know they had to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And was just like, oh, sure. What looks good. And just sent it off.
I don't know. It's somebody that's like in the industry. You've written and edited books. You're in the production process. Are you surprised to see this?
I mean, I'm shocked, but I can see where these things happen, and I can easily see this being a case where like someone took over and just wasn't aware of the old material and just assumed like, oh, the trim looks fine. There's no major errors. I guess that's fine. I do get that in that on that one page on the far right there on the screen in the middle where it's blank, that Green Lantern's talking about it being green in there. So so it's when you're looking at these sort of pages, you're not necessarily doing the proofreading. Like this was probably done at the stage of like, I'm just taking a quick glance, make sure there's no glaring errors, and like, it looks fine. And
it feels like whoever was responsible for this was let go. The project was put on someone else's desk, and they're like, what do I need to do with this? And I'm like, oh, it's already ready. Like, okay. Great.
Because I mean it's weird because the reprints department was already like small, and when you look at previews and you see the books coming out, they pump a lot of trades out.
Yes, they do.
Every month. So you're looking at someone who probably got a lot more stuff dumped on them and was like, all right, I'm just gonna skim through. Okay, it looks good. Everything's like centered. It looks, everything's centered. It's not blurry. Okay, whatever. Send it off. So that seems to be probably what we're looking at here.
Reminds me of my military days. All of a sudden, someone would be like, Sergeant Doherty, so-and-so's mom is sick. They actually had to go home, to another state. Can you we need you to take over today. Like, I've never done that job. Like, that's why you're a sergeant. Perfect. let me go see about that. Now, this isn't the only error of this variety. It looks like whoever was responsible for the JLA omnibus cover of Grant Morrison's JLA run was not familiar with the cape used by Martian Manhunter, as it is clearly absent in the new omnibus printing.
This here, I think there's a possibility of more of an explanation because they did change the logo. And I can see them looking at this and being like, you know what? Because, not only is the cape got like the big collar, all of that's gone. So I think
it could have been a creative decision.
I think this was a creative decision where they were like, let's change the logo. The logo takes up more space. And then by doing that, they were like, oh, it's too busy if you have the cape coming up over the logo.
This is the part that doesn't make sense, though. Then why did you keep this?
Yeah, it's very like, it's, I see where it kind of like, because it looks like it's drooping down and it's, then comes swooping back up. And like it needed to come up a little further. The error, I think, is that gap between Martian Manhunter and Kyle there, where they needed the cape there. But other than that, I think that was, mostly.
You think this was on purpose? They're like, it doesn't fit the new logo.
Yeah, I think it was that, not wanting to interrupt the logo too much, But I do think they're missing that, and the cover, the characters on it, I think need to be pushed a little further down, like just move them a little down to just leave the JLA uninterrupted at the top. But yeah, I think it's more of it's a little rushed, but I do think it was like an intentional sort of decision.
Yeah. Whoever left this part of the clipping on it, I don't get it.
Yes.
It makes no sense. But yeah, they probably could have had the little cape here and it would have been fine.
Yeah, it would have looked better if they didn't leave that out. That would have.
But of course, JLA fans are going to notice because this is what comic fans do. We notice stuff.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, it's this cover could have used like another, half hour or so in Photoshop, I guess, to clean it up and fix it. But yeah, I do think it was intentional. They just missed a little bit. So it's not.
So you think there were 2 printing errors and 1 bad Photoshop job?
That seems to be the case. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, there we go. And thank you for your expertise. Obviously, you've been involved in the production of comic books, distribution, stuff like that. So obviously, you have much more knowledge about this than I do. And that'll basically wrap up today's video. We have rumors. They look to be well-founded rumors. DC Comics are going to be licensing their characters for some original graphic novels by Penguin Random House, eyeing towards the YA and kids graphic novel sectors. And we have some printing errors. Obviously, Joe was here to talk to me about that. Joe, did you have anything else that you needed to say before we kind of wrap this bad boy up?
I think we covered most of it, but yeah, I think Penguin Random House, we're going to be seeing Teen Titans focus stuff. Maybe we'll see some more Robin stuff. I personally feel like we're probably not going to see as much like with Harley Quinn, like they did was it Broken Glass or Breaking Glass? Yeah, I think we're not going to see too much of that because Warner seems to be pushing for more of an adult Deadpool Harley. Between the Birds of Prey movie, the very like adult themed cartoon, her involvement heavily in the current Batman comic. So I can see Penguin Random House shying away from a character like Harley directed for kids and really pushing the Titans characters, Robin, and
I can't wait for I Am Not Nightwing.
but I do think, and I think the sales support my theory that I Am Not Starfire was a script that Mariko had that DC saw that the Titans books were selling much better than anything else in the YA line, and we're just like, hey, what can we do to this script without changing too much to make it a Titans book? Because that's going to sell more.
I absolutely have seen an interview or two where Dan Didio was lauding the success of the Raven book by Cami Garcia. They were talking. It was unexpected. They didn't expect sales like that.
Yeah, so I could see them just being like, because it seems like a very, typical, I guess is the word for it. Like coming of age, mom and daughter not getting along, and then probably finding out how much they really have in common at the end kind of story. Like it's typical. We've seen this a lot. It's an easy sell. So I could see Mariko having written a book like that, and then DC kind of being like, "Hey, no one bought that yet. Make the mom Starfire, and we're good." Like, that's. I feel like, especially with those numbers, that's my theory here. Is that's what happened.
Well, I do think Penguin Random House probably has a better idea on the market, and will probably use DC's characters better for the purposes that they're trying to serve. So,
yeah.
Thanks a lot, Joe. I really appreciate it today. This is a good conversation.
Yeah, no problem. And they'll probably end up doing something with Wonder Girl to either Donna Troy or Yara Flor. Like we'll probably see something.
Yara Flor is the future Wonder Girl.
Yeah.